Thank you. All right, Andy.
Quick. I just sent Scott, end of last week, first cut of the definitions section. He and I did not get a chance to meet it because the week went fast.
I was hoping that would be it.
So, like I said, I have draft here. It has highlights and notes and stuff in here that are things that Scott and I need to sit down and talk about before it gets to you. The rest of it, I did go through and make a bunch of changes. I left some of the highlights into the full thing here that will eventually they're left in there because they're one of the things I want to highlight when it goes to your attorney to double check. There's a couple sections there that he needs to look at, but I don't want to send that to him and incur that cost, A, without you guys telling me to, and B, until we get the full thing done. So that's kind of where that stands. There is something else that came up, though, that I wanted to reason within our office. I haven't had a chance to talk to Scott about it, and it has to do with what the data source is for the survey on a plan that comes in. And as I know we have experience with this, you can field survey it, you can plot it from the deed, or some other people they'll plot it from the GIS data they get. The first two are okay. We've recently run into a situation where it was one of these old deeds where they took some chunks out over years, and you had say a chunk here, and then on the same deed you had another thing here, and what connected them before doesn't connect them anymore.
They weren't contiguous.
Right.
Down there.
Right. So now, and where that came in was the non-contiguous part wasn't big enough for clean and green.
No.
And because it was not contiguous, it gets separate tax parcels.
Ours up there is separate tax parcel, but it's 20 acres. So
Right. Yeah. Well, in this situation, there's some situations where and now this particular one, if I told you who it was, you'd be like, why are they not putting it in? And that's a different issue. But there's situations where if they plot it from the GIS data, which we've seen done, it's going to not be accurate. We've because of this issue that's cropped up, we haven't officially been told. It's been heavily insinuated from our attorneys that plans should not use the tax GIS data and the tax parcels for subdivision work. Because of this, it's an administrative thing. It's an administrative process, not a
physical survey.
Right. And if they want to plot it from the deed, and the deed doesn't, as at another municipality where they were wanted to buy a property from a church next door where the deed dated back to the 1800s, and when they plotted it, it went like this. It was a triangle with 2 points over here. So, but we currently don't have any. It was so new that there's nothing anywhere in the town in the county that deals with it. So I didn't want to bring it here because I know you've had some experience with it, and Scott has.
Preservation did because they serve over the yards, and it was straightened out. It was done.
Yeah.
Survey.
Right.
Because him and I he caught it back years ago, that one piece of ours up there.
So.
Because the one property was sold off of the farm, and then it opened it up.
Yeah.
Our ordinance, it's like similar to most other ordinances, it requires closure within 1 to 10,000.
And you can't prove that with the GIS.
No,
you can't.
So no. What our question was, since I have two people here that have experience with this, is if that's what we're being told shouldn't happen, should we be putting specific language in the, and I'm asking, not suggesting.
Well, I don't think so,
that-
because that GIS ain't completely accurate on.
Right.
where the
Should we be specifically saying that
Well, it
that's
is
not permitted?
accurate, but
It's not accurate.
you gotta go by what's on paper.
Right.
It's
It's not,
not,
it's not a field run survey
no.
where you go out and
So it
and
may not be accurate.
locate the
That's what I'm
existing
saying.
monumentation
Yeah.
Right.
and survey actually do a proper survey of the
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's precise, it doesn't mean it's accurate, guys.
Well, I understand that, but
How do you rectify it though whenever it's an old survey and the old survey was inaccurate?
Well, they
And then
said-
you survey it today
Well, that
and
takes
it's off. Then what do you do?
they sat down and adjusted and.
That's why,
they come up with it.
that's why you hire a professional surveyor
Yeah.
to do the work.
Well, yeah, but
Because
what
you have to
I can-
evaluate all the evidence.
It's not just that property, you gotta plot
yeah,
all the other
I know,
properties around
because
it.
if
Yeah,
one's
okay.
wrong, then
It can,
Others are
it
wrong.
screws up the other ones
Yeah.
as well.
That all has to be rectified.
Yeah, you.
I can give the example I used for another township. They had to go serve, not only, they did it because they were buying property.
Mhm.
They not only surveyed the church property they're buying it from, but all the other properties around it
That were joined,
to
get it to work out.
we're talking deeds that date not quite from the point where I now stand type of description, but we're in that era. They had to go survey everything else around it.
Pendies.
Yeah.
Well,
the meth-
when we put our farm into farm preservation 20 some odd years ago, the farm is actually two separate properties. It's been owned by my family for over 100 years. Well, when we went into farm preservation, there's a little cemetery that straddles the property lines. Well, they already did the calculations for farm preservation, then realized that it was a designated cemetery, so they had to come back and resurvey it. And they spent a lot of time surveying a cemetery that probably isn't, if it's only 50 by 50 or,
about the size of this room.
yeah, about the size of this room. But then that had to be taken out of the farm preservation because private owners don't own a cemetery, the state does.
Right. And it, honestly, it was a preservation property that is what brought this
Come to light.
to our attention.
Because they survey everything and all the points have to close out.
Yeah, yeah.
well, I see a lot of deeds that's right on the deed. It says this was taken from a previous survey by so-and-so and so-and-so.
Yeah.
And,
Well, some of the old deeds, you know, a pile of rocks or a big tree.
yeah,
or-
but
Yeah, tree that's
this
down
makes
gone.
reference.
And somebody bulldozed a pile of rocks away.
Yeah.
Tree died 30 years ago,
Yeah.
yeah.
But this piece
Yeah.
of, this deed that this landowner has states that I'm dependent on that deed.
Some
from-
other survey,
from-
yeah.
Yeah, the deed that I have for our farm was deeded off from William Penn.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we have that original deed.
See, that's what
It was-
happened up there.
It was written in Old English and was paid with English money.
No, ours wasn't, but ours was,
Yeah.
handy, you know.
The
Well,
original deed.
the question on the table though is should we say something about GIS?
The question that is in general, should we be writing, if that's what we're being told by our people, should we be encouraging municipalities to specifically say in the ordinances that
I think it should be-
plans can only be sourced from, or basically the GIS cannot be used to meet
It's
this.
really
Absolutely.
disallowing
Or something.
GIS.
Now,
Yeah.
as I said this in another municipality, their response was, well, you realize what that's going to do to the cost of the plans.
Yeah. I think it
That's
should be-
flip side.
I think it should be a hard survey. That's my opinion.
As a retired professional land surveyor and engineer, I'll put my foot in there and say that a GIS is not a survey. It's a
Right.
representation. It's not. They don't go out and physically locate the corners. They don't. They can play with it on the computer and stuff, but it's not the same.
I think my opinion, it should be a hard survey because we got into some issues.
Exactly.
That's my
Yeah.
opinion. Because then you know what you got.
Right.
Because that guy's license bonded and everything had.
Yeah, he's putting the neck on the,
Yeah.
that surveyor's putting his neck on the
Yes.
line that is correct. And he's sealing it, and it's state approved, that you don't need to worry about it then, if it's his problem, if it's wrong.
The
But
issue,
you can be wrong, and there's fights between surveyors on things. I've
They
been
had
through
a
that.
Yeah.
They had to survey a neighbor's property up there to get one pin on our one, on the one farm. They actually surveyed his whole property again. It
Yeah.
was surveyed in the 70s, and to get the lines to work out, they had to survey his property, so they had the right acreage on his property so they could set the pin.
Yeah.
Neighbor. Plus, we had some non-contiguous ground, yeah.
GIS is it's a good tool to, from my standpoint, it's a good tool to do your preliminary work before you went out and look, but it's not the same as, it doesn't stand up, and I don't think it'll stand up in court as far as the survey goes.
one of the other issues that has been created by this, and this, I'll take these in non-contiguous parts. When they assign separate tax parcels, that's what those maps are based on, the tax parcel,
Right.
tax parcels, not the survey parcels.
Right.
Then you show two separate. They'll assign different parcel numbers to it. Now all of a sudden you have two parcels
Yeah, that's right.
that what the zoning is based on. All of a sudden, this that wasn't subdivided now has a separate parcel and could potentially be developed as something else, even though it's not by deed. It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So it's there. There's some issues to work through, and other things. But that was I wanted to bring that up, if that's something that you're interested in, I think when we sit down and meet about the
Well,
definition.
Does that add an expense to every one of these of requiring, because GIS is right most of the time, I agree, it's not right all the time, but do we now put an expense on in every transaction and whatever it is, that a hard survey, not cheap?
We might get. Honestly, we haven't tried. We see it occasionally, where it's plotted from GIS. What the size of the plans are, I couldn't tell you. I know that the other 110 last. I talked about this with another township last week, and their engineer's response was, "Well, that's going to potentially increase the cost for those that do it that way."
Yeah.
I don't know the frequency of ones that do it that way, or what circumstances they would want to do it that way for.
I just say one thing. It's a sad day whenever we retrograde to a point where GIS is taking the place of an actual field survey. Because it's not, the two are not the same.
No, you're not.
One's a representation, one is a certification that the property, as plotted, as surveyed, closes, and the corners and all that are located. You can't do that with GIS.
I would think that if you were, every municipality require things to be surveyed for every plan, and that was followed up with a strict adherence from requirements that new deeds be recorded based on that survey and the resulting lots, that eliminates some of these tract lines and these things. It would clean up a lot of things and make lives a lot easier for zoning officers and enforcement staff.
Cost a little bit more up front, but you eliminated all those chances because now you closed everything off with everybody, all the points.
Yeah.
Then the whole thing closes out and you got your acreage you're supposed to have.
One of the biggest headaches when I used to work in survey was you'd have some of these guys, I wouldn't call, they were called surveyors, but they'd take and plot stuff on paper and never go out in the field. They just draw up the deeds and plot them out and even subdivide them on paper without, and you'd go out there and try and stake that or locate that stuff. It wasn't there. There might have been half an acre missing in that deed. And you'd go out there and say, it's because of the junk that was done by that person prior.
Mm-hmm.
And just remember those recorded plans and the deeds that are recorded with them are what get translated down from the recorder's office downstairs on the first floor to the tax mapping on the second floor to the parcels to the assessing and to the bills that go out. So if it's inaccurate coming in, it's inaccurate
Going out.
going back
Stays
out
the same
Yeah.
going
into
out.
your mailboxes.
Yeah.
Well, if they think it's expensive hiring a surveyor to do it, they ought to try going to court with their neighbor and have the judge decide what that property line is
Yeah.
supposed to be.
And then who pays for that? If you have that and you have 2 or 3 properties, now that because this person's buying this and these are all out, who pays for all that then?
It would usually be the person that's doing the subdividing.
You're gonna pay what the guy's selling off, no.
So they're gonna end up paying to survey all those other 3 or 4 other properties around it. I'm just asking because
Yeah.
we're talking about a cost.
I know it
They
well.
did that up there, that they couldn't get that one to work out. They had to survey the neighboring property to get the stuff to work out, to get the numbers to work.
I can say, and you mentioned the preservation programs. We've probably used almost every surveyor in the county over the years to survey because we have to survey those as part of the process. So, and if it goes on to other ones, I mean, we're dropping can drop 5 figures on a survey easily
Oh, yeah.
for some of those.
Yeah.
And I know of one plan over by the property over by the school campus down in New Oxford, where a simple subdivision of 4 lots, it didn't close. The closure report that came in was so far off from a survey that the engineer refused to accept it.
Yeah.
So they had to go out and he had to go back and survey everything around him so his deed closed. And he ended up with a significantly different acreage-wise property than he thought he had. So now he was still mad that he was forced to do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's
Yeah, he sold, whoever he sold it to, they got the acreage that they said they got.
Right.
Even though he didn't have the total acreage he was gonna sell to start with.
correct.
This all comes down to another thing is getting clear title on properties.
Yeah.
You know, if there's, that can be a real mess if it's not done
Yeah,
properly.
because the bank, if they find it, you're gonna pay it anyhow.
Yeah, banks will make you do it.
And I won't even get into where the municipal lines accurate.
Well,
That's
Huntington
different issue.
Huntington Township has a boundary line that nobody knows where it is. Well, they went to court and the judge never made a decision. And so, over there on the Idaville Road,
Up on the other side,
on
yeah.
that edge of York Springs and Huntington Township, we still don't know where the line is.
Well, so from the discussion here, it sounds like when Scott and I meet to discuss definitions, we'll sit down and discuss that and see if there's.
You know where I stand
So that we
on
go
it.
for that
Yeah, I
section there to resolve that.
I don't think you should do anything on a survey, and have a survey, and have, this is this much. And, yeah,
Doesn't our current ordinance require, I think it requires a survey, closure within like 1 to 10,000?
It does. What I'm thinking is if we're getting this pushback from our internal of the county about this, that it's easier to say in the municipal ordinance, say you can't,
right away.
it cannot be done.
Yeah,
This
it's
source
required.
cannot be
Yeah,
used.
yeah.
Period.
It
End
does.
of story.
It does.
And then it's just they can come and ask for all the waivers they want and just tell them no.
Yeah.
That's,
So. But if I'm looking to, if that's what we're being told, if they don't want it to be used for, well then, so we've been revising this ordinance so that plans are designed the way you want them. Okay, well, let's just tell them what you don't want them to use, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
because then you got all your numbers, you got to prove it.
Okay. That's all.
Because a lot of these old farm deeds are a couple hundred years old, because a lot of them weren't surveyed for until
Right.
preservation, and now you're surveying for preservation, and the deed is 200 years old.
Yeah.
Now, you know, they made mistakes then too.
a lot of them. They were, back then, I don't know, it take much time. Back then, they used link chains,
Yep,
and
they'd
now
have
they're,
weights.
now they're using GPS or else electronic, mainly GPS.
Yeah.
And I mean, and they use compasses. Some use compasses, some use transits, but there's a big difference in the way things are done now compared to.
Well, they use stars too.
Yeah, the good ones use the stars.
That's how we got the Mason-Dixon line. They surveyed based on the stars.
They were the good ones.
Well, did they take into consideration a cloudy day?
One other thing before I go, the things that Gus mentioned wanting to look at next year, we've done some of those. We've done stuff in other municipalities before. If you want, send me the list, and I can give you guys
That'd be great.
something to start
Yep.
from that we've done.
That'd save us a lot of time.
There's no sense in starting from scratch if we've already done something.
Yeah.
We have multiple examples, multiple different types of settings.
Okay.
You can, I mean,
Did we have any on the list you don't have? I'll give you the list. Airbnbs, wedding barns, eco housing, demolition permits, and home lives.
well, when you get into the Airbnbs, there's a few other things
In
that vicinity, especially so Airbnb. That package is different in, say, a Gettysburg Borough, for
Yeah.
example, versus a township, because you have more land. There's other options.
Yeah.
There's other options
In consideration.
that you can do on bigger land
Yeah.
than just Airbnb. So there's a couple other things there that comes with the package in townships.
The other thing would be,
Like camping is. There's a camping version of the Airbnbs,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So,
yep.
yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing about the wedding barn would be a venue, is there time limit on the music at like 10 o'clock?
There's a lot of things to consider on
Somebody else
those.
maybe went through that already.
Not to take up more
They
time,
have.
but the big thing that I would plant the seed is, should it be the primary use on the property or an accessory use on the property? That is a massive, massive question that you need to grapple with.
There are
Leave it
places
at
being
that.
purchased for a primary use.
Just for that purpose, yeah.
In primary, that would be commercial zoning then.
Well,
You would think,
Oh,
but
it ain't.
anybody know where Bittersweet is
Well, what
down?
I'm saying is if it was a wedding venue and they made it primary. Now, the Airbnb, I have,
Well, know where the one Bittersweet's down Dick's Dam Road off of 94.
Yeah.
That one's in the ag district in that township.
There are some that let it in the exit. It's a barn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why when they get sold as it's helping the farm be profitable, but most of them they're putting that on. They might be leasing the other 50 acres, but that 5 or whatever that the barn's on is a commercial operation. So with that, it's
Nothing simple.
but we have some stuff that we can give you as examples to start with. So
Give
not
us some
so
answers. That kind of thing to look at.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Any other new business?
Gus, would you put a broadband update on the agenda for the next time? Because I did talk to Sherry, but we ran late. I don't want to spend any time on it tonight. And I'll give everybody a broadband.
on a broadband update, all right.
Yeah, just put it on the agenda. Thank you.
Sorry. Comments?
Yeah, I have a question. You're an engineer, Mr. Strife, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm not sure, Mr. Decker, are you?
I was.
We're different engineers.
I'm retired. I was-
Yeah, I just have a quick question. If you remember back in June, you had asked Mr. Longstreth to check on Greenbrier Culvert. He said he would do that. I was surprised because it wasn't mentioned in any of his bills that he had gone there for July or August. So in September, late, the 23rd in fact, I had requested any kind of inspection reports that the township had received from 2022, 23, and 24. I was surprised because my list included any third party where Mr. Longstreth had to, say, give an inspection report for that $100,000 grant. I was surprised because Pat responded back that there was no inspection reports. There was nothing. There was no correspondence or anything. Is it usual for a professional engineer to do inspections and not have something in writing that it was done and provide that to the client?
I'll address it from my standpoint, you want to address it from yours, which is probably more relevant as a civil engineer.
Well, it depends what the inspection was. Was it going out there to just look at the site and see if it was, yeah, we need to do something.
Right.
If you do physical inspections of the structural construction, that's something else. But to go out there and look at it in the field, and I went out many times and looked at when I was working, and I'd look at something, I didn't always write a report up on it because it was something I was dealing with myself, in the office.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't speak to this issue because I don't know what all was request. If the request is for a formal inspection of the integrity, which Scott would probably ask, you would probably ask for a structural engineer to look at them. Maybe, I don't know. But no, it's not always the case.
And I would agree. It depends on the degree of the inspection. So there have been plenty of times where either I or another engineer under my direction would have inspected something, and I wouldn't expect a report. There were times when I did expect a report. I will say in this case, I don't know what Scott did, but my view was just look at it because I observed that we didn't have enough, what I considered, and I'm not the expert, by the way, on this issue, on culverts.
Right.
I didn't think we had enough gravel in an area that we had all talked about having more gravel. Now, there could have been some there that washed out, probably did. But I felt that was my view, and that's why I asked Scott to take a look at it. I didn't expect a report from him.
Okay, because I know he's under the direction of the Board of Supervisors, but you were the only one concerned about it. So thank you for that. But thank you for your responses.
By the way, I didn't expect the 500-year rain to happen after I thought it was a good idea to inspect. We've had millions of those by definition, but I didn't expect one in August.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's it.
The next meeting is January 27th. Anybody else have any, before I close, anybody else have any comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Ron. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So moved.